Hey you, and welcome. In this video, we will add navigation to our already existing app that we had built in the previous video, the Contacts app. So let's dive right into it. I will start by using the React DOM router, or React Router DOM, that's the library name. So if I go to Firefox, that's the library that I want to work with. The documentation for which is available on reactrouter.com. That's the documentation I have open. We will refer to it in just a second, but first thing first, I will install it in my app. So if I go back to my CLI and npm install React Router DOM, and that should install the React Router DOM for me. Now, how do we use that in our app? Let's look at the documentation. I will hop over to create browser router. That's the router we will be using. There's tons of others, but the one you need for your browser is the create browser router. All right, so if I go here, it tells me that you have to import browser router from create router DOM, and you have to provide it something like this, which is a object array of objects, and the object will have different values. We will copy paste this code, and also need to provide router provider from a router DOM. So let's do all of that. All right, so first things first, let's copy paste the import into VS Code. I'll do all of this in index.tsx. That's our root. So let's do it above right here. And then let's copy over line number 11 to 24. So that's the router configuration. Now we will be missing a few components, but we'll create those out. And of course, we'll change the configuration to match our convention that we need to work with. So let's do it above here. All right, so it is missing root. And again, we did create a root component. So maybe I can do an auto import here. Yes, I can. And then root loader, we don't need to worry about that. We will not be doing loading from React Router. We will create our own later on. And then for the nested component, I will comment this one out for now. We don't have a nested component. That means we only have one route. So it's still a single page app, but we're just importing the navigation into our app. So if I save, nothing really changes because I haven't really done anything with this router configuration. So let's go back to the documentation, copy paste router provider into where the app is. So that should render things accordingly. Perfect. Yes, it does. It does. Great. Next thing would be is I want to introduce some child component into it. And let's start with just a basic child component that just says welcome to my contact app, get started by clicking here, something like that. And that's usually called hero component. So if I go to Chakra templates, I believe there is a section for hero components right there. And I can pick one. I'll pick the first one right here. There's tons of others, I believe. Yes, there are. I will just work with the first one here. So copy the code. And I think I'll copy all of it into my hero.tsx file. So I'll create a new file called hero.tsx and I'll copy paste all of this. So let's copy this. All right, let's head over to File Explorer. In the components, new file called hero.tsx. Paste that in, hide the File Explorer. Now let's make a few changes because I noticed that it was working with a different framework called Next. So Next head, we don't need head here. So all of this code about head can go away. We don't even need the fragment, seems like, anymore. Let me just see what the end of the code looks like. If it's a fragment, yes, it is. And the container, perfect. So we can delete even the fragment here. What else? We don't need $15 a month. We don't charge for the service, so let's take that away. And what else? Is there any problems here? Seems pretty clean. I will do export const, take away the function, equals to greater than. It's a function component. TypeScript that, and we don't need children for this one. That's fine. So props with children is not necessary because we don't need children. Otherwise, we would have added that in. All right, what else? It is returning. It's a call to action with notification. I'll call this hero. Make it simple. Save that. All right, I think we're good to go. We're good to start using that. So let's go back to index.tsx, uncomment the children path. And in this children path, I will say contacts, like so. And then hero, auto import that. And loader, no loader. So let's go ahead and save this. Nothing should render just now, which is fine. That's expected. The reason why is because we're not using another API from React Router DOM called outlet. So if I go back to the documentation and search for outlet, there's a component in React Router called outlet, and we have to implement that. And all it is just a JSX to tell React Router where the children elements should be rendered out from the parent. So in this case, our parent is the root component, and inside root component, we have to use outlet. So let's go back to our root component, which is the parent in this case, jump to definition. I think I can just do it like this. Perfect. And I think where our, right here, the children, we will replace children with outlet. That means our root component doesn't really need children anymore. I can delete that notation, and I can even stop working with props for children and delete that from the top up as well. So let's delete some unused code. Yes, unused code. Yeah, that's fine. Save. All right, there's a problem. What's the problem? Outlet is not a JSX. All right, why is that? Oh, because I haven't imported that from React Router DOM. Auto import, save that, and I think we're good. Is this working? Not really. Oh, because we're not on that route, I believe. Contexts. That's what it is. Okay. All right. So we're not on that route. That's why I was complaining. We can actually change this to index. True. And I think we don't need a path at this point. So save that. And if I take it away, perfect. It works as expected. So I'll start by creating a contact component, which will render out our contact, the selected contact, and then we will put that in our navigation. So I'll head over to File Explorer, Components. Let's create a new component, call it contact details.tsx, and import React from React and export default. Actually, let's copy over some of the code from the template. I believe there is one in the Chakra templates called cards right there. And there's a few nice cards already built for us. So let's just copy over the code for this one right here. Let's copy all of it. There we go. And let's paste it in here, replacing everything. Hide the File Explorer. Let's change the code style again. So I'll make this export const, take away the function, make this an arrow function. And I will do a TypeScript for function component, import. There's no children required, so no props with children required. Social profile simple, I'll call this contact details right there. And I think that should be fine. Alt is giving us an error, I think. Why are you giving us error? Alt does not exist. Okay, well, I'll take that out. I think we're good. It's looking nice. Let's save that. Now it is not rendered, so let's go into index.tsx and let's provide another route here, and we will put the path as contacts/ID. So when you do :ID, that's telling the router that I'm expecting a dynamic content right after contacts to pass down as a param in the URL. So we're going to see that in action in a little bit, but for now I'll just call this ID. And let's provide an element. This would be contact details, auto import. And I think that should be fine. Let's go ahead and save this. So nothing really changes, but if I try to navigate manually to contacts/ASM, doesn't matter, it's the card that we copied over from Chakra template, which is working fine. But of course, I don't want it to just show hard-coded information. I want it to know the contacts that we have in our contact provider, the contact context, and I want to render those out accordingly. So let's do that really quickly. I'll head over to contact details, and I will use param, which is use param is a hook from React Router DOM. I can import that directly from React Router DOM, so I'll copy that, paste that into cards somewhere here, contact details. Take away extra imports. We just need use params here. And let's take a look at the usage in the documentation. It lets me extract out something from the object, which will be in our case called ID, all lowercase. Doesn't have to be let, but we can work with that. I'll probably change that to const. It's probably not going to change, and get the ID. Now, when I get the ID, let me just go ahead and change some value in my card so I know I'm getting it right. So let's change, where's the name? Lindsay, right there. Okay, so let's start a JavaScript curly, and provide ID directly in there. Save that. Perfect. It's working just fine. So that means whatever I provided, in this case, contact/Azim, it's working just fine. If I were to change this to John, that would work okay as well. So we are using the param being passed down, but I do want to make more of this customizable. So let's take away some of the tags. We don't need tags. We don't need message. We don't need follow. Just the description is good enough. Handles will be going away as well. So let's take away some of the extra stuff that we copied over. Yeah, this can go away as well. We'll change this with the description that will come in from our provider. Yeah, these are the tags. Let's take away the whole stack element. All right, and then rest of it, yes, stack again goes away. Perfect, looking much cleaner now. And let's delete a bunch of imports that may be not needed anymore. Great, great, great. All right, so next thing would be is I want to get one contact out of my context for the contact. It's weird naming convention. All right, so let's go to contact provider, or context, I believe I called it. There we are. And in here, I want to pass down a user function to get one user by ID. Now notice I don't have an ID for the user, so I do have to start using that. So let's just provide ID for each one. This is ID 1, this is ID 2, and in the interface for eye contact, we can say ID is required and it's going to be a number. All right, so that should stop complaining. And now in here, I will start writing a new function, and I'll call this get one by, or get contact by ID. It will expect an ID as a number. Oops, extra P over there. All right, with a number, and it will return from contacts dot find, and it will get a contact every loop it does, and then contact dot ID equals ID. It will return that contact by itself. Perfect. So that's working just fine. Now I do have to provide that as a part of the context API. So I do have to pass it down. We're on line number 36, just like context. So first things first, let's document that up here in the eye contact context. I will provide get contact by ID as a function, which can return eye contact. So one user, and you will have to pass me a ID, which is a number. And then under here, we have to instantiate that as a function. Now it will complain because we are not returning anything. So I'm thinking we can say eye contact or undefined, like so. And in this case, let's just pass back undefined. That should be fine. All right, so by default, the function will always return undefined until it gets instantiated up here, then it will be fine. And then in line 38, I've already started passing down get contact by ID. So if I save this, we should be fine. Of course, the error on the right side still persists because we haven't done anything to fix that yet. So let's go back to our contact details and start working with use context API here, auto import, and then pass it the contact context, auto import as well, destructure out, get contact by ID, and then we can say contact equals to get contact by ID, and we'll pass the ID down to this function, which will return us a contact. Now there is a TypeScript error. The reason why it's complaining is because it may be a string or undefined. In this case, we can just say cast it to as number. So just assume it will be a number. Yes, okay. So we can just say as unknown as number. Contact, perfect. Let's save that. Next thing would be start using contact as the value. So contact name would go here and contact description would go here. Notice that there's question mark before the dot, and that's a condition to say if contact is null, then don't render anything. And if the contact has value, then give me the name. That's what it is. Otherwise, we would have to write some long form to say if the contact doesn't exist, then don't render anything. But if it does exist, contact.name. Question mark just makes it that it's shorter. And same thing for description. This will help us not run into any kind of null or undefined error messages. So go ahead and save. And let me refresh. There we are. Okay, so contact is not working. I think it's because the ID is John. Let's change it to 1. And that's not working either. Reason for that is because I believe our ID is a string and we don't have to cast type it. So let's just make it so that ID is parse int, like so. It's a bit dangerous because we have to specify that this will always be true, or this will ID will always have a value and it will always be a number, so parse int will never fail. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and put exclamation at the end, and that should take away the error for us, which will say that I know TypeScript is complaining, but I will take full responsibility if it errors out. So user is opting out of TypeScript here. Save that, and there we go. We're getting John as number 1, and for number 2, I believe that's Sally. So it's working just fine, and our template is working just fine. All right, I'll see you all in the next video.